Hi folks, welcome to the weekend. I trust that you've had a good week and that you've managed to wrap yourself around a decent book or two. And on that topic, what have I been reading this week? First up is Those Who Resist by Nick Scrimgeour, or NC Scrimgeour, on audiobook. I actually don't have a physical copy, so you can see it here. And that's the conclusion to what's been an enjoyable trilogy. I mean, arguably it's not doing anything terribly new, but I think she sticks the landing, and I think it's a good conclusion to the overall story arc. The bigger threat that was well signposted in the earlier books manifests itself, and the reason or logic behind their mindless attacks becomes clear, as does a possible way to stop it. There are some boxes that a space opera should just tick in order to be considered part of that subgenre. The scope should be broad, there should be spaceships, there should be a large cast of characters, there should be an undue amount of peril, there should be aliens, ideally, in the mix somewhere. And you could probably add seemingly unstoppable baddies to that list as well. And I think that the Way Stations trilogy, of which this is the final part, ticks all of those boxes. I enjoyed the sweep of the story. I enjoyed the various characters, some of whom go on quite a journey over the course of the three books. There are a couple of will they, won't they relationships that resolve mostly in a satisfying way in this final book. There's some noble sacrificing going on, and there's some last gasp rescuing and heroics. Overall, I think this was a fun space opera. I think if you enjoyed Becky Chambers' Wayfarer books, then there's something in here for you with the characters, the human and the alien, and the relationships between them. Equally, if you tend towards the more kinetic in your space opera, say the Neil Ashers or the Peter F. Hamiltons of the world, then Way Stations is maybe a little bit lighter than those, but I suspect that you still enjoy spending time with these books. I enjoyed them. I had fun. They were definitely worth my time. Next, I read The Separation by Christopher Priest, and the setup for this involves a journalist and historian in 1999. But it's 1999 where it's clear from his work that World War II, what's known to him as the German War, ended in May 1941 and not June 1945, as we know. And history has been rather different since then. As part of his research, he's looking into somebody called J.L. Sawyer, who he believes played a part in the final day of the war. We then get flashbacks to this J.L. Sawyer's activities before and during the war. And to complicate matters, there are two J.L. Sawyers, identical twin brothers, Joe and Jack, who are often mistaken for each other. And the notion of a doppelganger is visited a number of times in the book. Winston Churchill is known to have had at least one body double, for example, and Rudolf Hess too. There was always some ambiguity about whether the Rudolf Hess that came to the UK was the real Rudolf Hess or not. Back to the twins. One JL is a pilot in Bomber Command, and the other is a conscientious objector who ends up driving a Red Cross ambulance during the Blitz. So having teed the book up as an alternate history, Christopher Priest then proceeds to mess with our heads. We get chapters that appear to be from the history that we know, with the war continuing on into 1945, and then others that appear to be from the history that the guy from the prologue is researching. And we also get splinters of history that might be from either or even neither. I got the impression that many possible histories could exist as part of this book. The roles played by the brothers and the fates that await them are different in each of these potential histories, some subtly and sometimes substantially different. The Separation is a novel of inflection points, of cusps of change. The first half focuses mainly on the bomber pilot, and the second on the conscientious objector, which is actually not very easy to say. We see the same time periods play out from their different perspectives. Events are not clear-cut. Both JLs are potentially unreliable as narrators, or at least their hindsight may be less than 2020. There are some nice, rather tenuous links between the 1940s timeline and the alternate 1999, and a nice what the hell moment where one such link is broken, where the timelines seem to cross or borrow from each other. The relationship between both the JLs and a German refugee, Birgit, is done nicely, and fittingly perhaps for identical twins. They both love her, which causes a number of complications. I found The Separation to be an easy read. Priest's writing is clear and concise, sparse and precise, even if what he's saying is often confusing and unsettling, designed to put the reader off kilter. I like a historical fiction and the World War II era in general, so I was comfortably uncomfortable whilst reading this. But I can see if that sort of history isn't your thing, then this book might not work quite as well. But I am pleased to say that I have plenty of other Christopher Priest books which are as yet unread, and I'm very much looking forward to exploring more of his work. Next, I read The Sparrow by Mary Daria Russell, and this is a book that seems to elicit strong opinions with no middle ground. People either seem to love it or hate it. So what did I think? The SETI team at the Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico have picked up a signal from outer space. But unusually, it's a musical signal, and to a certain ear, divine in nature, and close too, at least as interstellar distances go. The Jesuits see an opportunity to explore the divine, to seek more of God's children, and they decide to fund a mission to visit Rakat, the source of the signal in the Alpha Centauri system. The Sparrow has an interesting structure, flipping chapter by chapter between around 2019 and a couple of years following that, and 2060. And in the 2060 timeline, a Jesuit priest, Emilio Sandoz, is recuperating in the care of his order, the sole survivor of the mission, and he's blamed for many things, and there will be a hearing and perhaps a reckoning. Back in 2019, we follow Emilio Sandoz as a younger priest, a skilled linguist and missionary. He has an ambiguous relationship with his faith, and you could argue that the Sparrow is really about him not caring and then finding and then losing and then possibly finding again his faith in God. The first half of the book is spent getting ready to go on the mission. Mainly, that first half of the book is a vehicle to thoroughly introduce us to a small group of people that end up going on the mission, being the crew, along with Emilio. In the later timeline, Emilio goes through some things. He's accused and confronted and misunderstood, but also cared for. He's deeply, deeply traumatized by his experience on Rakat, the details of which are gradually, and I do mean gradually, revealed. The Sparrow, I think, is a slow burn. It could be argued that way too much time is spent building those relationships, the friendships, the loves between the group that surround Emilio. And I think that there's some merit in that argument. I think Russell does drag it out a bit. That said, I do think it's a necessary evil. In my opinion, in order for the ending of the book to pay off, it's really important that you invest in all of those characters and the strength of those bonds. And it's important so that those gut punches, the traumas that Emilio goes through, are experienced and felt by the reader, even if only vicariously and from the safety of your comfy reading chair. I thought that payoff in the final chapters, as the whole tale comes to a crescendo in both time periods, was well worth the extremely slow build. I do have the sequel, Children of God, which I hear mixed reports about, so I'm not in a huge rush to read it. Having said that, I've heard mixed reports about the Sparrow too, so I'll probably get to it at some point in the future. So overall, a pretty good reading week. Tell me, what have you been up to? Have you read anything good that you want to recommend? Do let us know in the comments down below. It's always really great to hear from you. Very briefly, channel stuff next. Subs are at 4,490, which is up 68 on last week. It was a pretty good week. And if you're one of those 68, or if you've stumbled upon my channel for the very first time today, then a huge welcome to you. I'm John, and I focus on collecting, reading, and waffling on about science fiction books, old and new. Comment of the week this week is from Sid, who observes, I might even say complains, that all British science fiction is London-centric, or very nearly all of it. And I gave some examples that I'm aware of that aren't, that are set elsewhere in the UK, but I'm sure you can probably think of some more. Or perhaps Sid's right. We had a little debate in the comments, and it's always good to have a discussion. So thank you to Sid for taking the time to leave a comment and to engage in that conversation. And thank you to all of you that do the same. As I say often, it's one of the favourite things that I have about running this channel. Let's take a quick look at what was on the channel this week. On Sunday, there was a themed video about science fiction books set in extremely cold climates, as befits the January weather. I know in the US it's been super freezing in parts in the last week, so maybe that was appropriate. Or maybe you'd have preferred a video that warmed you up a bit. It's not done especially well from a viewpoint of view. It's been kind of mid-table, but I enjoyed making it. On Wednesday, there was a run-through of a science fiction art book that I got for Christmas. I just take a flick through it and show off some of the art in there. I will properly read it at some point and do a review, but I just wanted to give a quick view to everybody. So that's this week's offering, and if you haven't watched either of those, then I commend them to you as being worthy of your time. On the book buying front, it's been a mixed bag. I've been, I think since the last time I recorded one of these, I've been twice to the Oxfam bookshop in Woodley, which is normally where I can find a steady stream of science fiction. And between those two visits, I come away with one solitary book. It's been a disappointingly dry well. I did buy a few Blu-rays as well, but that's hardly the same thing. But on the plus side, I have also made a bit of an order for a number of books from Porcupine Books, from their extremely quirky website. It's worth having a look at just to have a bit of a laugh. But within, if you're a little bit patient, it's just a list of books. Within are some really good quality science fiction books, paperbacks mainly, but also some hardbacks. And they are in excellent condition as a general rule, at least very good, and some of them often a lot better. So those arrived the other day, and then I've got others that are in various stages of winging their way to me from various parts. And my to-be hauled pile currently stands at 30 books, so February's haul video is looking pretty good already. Let's take a quick look ahead. On Sunday, there will be February's TBR selections. As usual, I'll be using the bingo balls of fate and the decision dice of destiny to help me choose which shelves and then which books on those shelves I'm going to read during next month. I've already recorded that, and I'm really excited about the books that I've got to read during February. And on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, some point during the week next week, there will be that overview of Adam Roberts' science fiction novels, of which I now have a complete collection. I actually did start to record that earlier in the week, and I began confidently with the books that I've already read, and then faltered as I hit a run of books that I haven't read and didn't really have to my fingertips a good enough summary of what they're about. So I need to do a bit more research, which I'll try to do during the weekend this weekend. I've also started to jot down now some notes for the infamous 100 years of space opera video, which I've been talking about doing forever, and that will just arrive when it arrives. It's going to be quite a long video. I need to do quite a bit of research for it, and I just don't want to rush it, so that I'll keep you posted about that one. Last week, I think I mentioned doing a video looking at the best opening lines in science fiction, and it turns out that Whitney, just completely coincidentally, Whitney over at Secret Source of Storycraft has a similar video planned, and we haven't quite decided what we're going to do. We might collaborate, but at the very least, we'll try to cover different books to deconflict the videos, as it were. And we may end up posting them on the same day. We'll see. But that will come around mid-February, I think. So what will I be reading in the coming week? I'm reading listening to Against the Dark Background on audiobook. I'm about 60% of the way through, so I should finish that during the week. Potentially, I could finish it this weekend, actually, if I don't run out of free listening hours on my Spotify Premium account. If I do, then I'll read the last 50 or 100 pages or whatever it is in the physical copy during the week. I'm about 2/3 of the way through Lady of Mazes by Carl Schroeder, which is pretty mind-bending stuff, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet. I think I'm enjoying it. The fact that I'm not sure says one or two things probably, but more on that next week. I will finish that during the week. That will leave then 2 books that were on my planned TBR pile for January. It's Sinners by Pat Cadigan, which is a cyberpunk classic, and Hard to Be a God by the Strugatsky brothers, both of which I will strive to finish during the week. As usual, thank you ever so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and until next time, goodbye for now.